I think that he'll probably end up staying. That's what I ultimately believe because I think he can. Look, the thing with LSU is that like their program, they have higher expectations than Ole Miss does. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Zain Bando, and this is another edition of Forever Power 5. You can watch this show on YouTube and all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to Forever Power 5 wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMartZan, at ZanBando99, and Will at Will Charlton H13. And this show is, and you can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow this show on Twitter and Instagram at FP5 and on TikTok at Forever Power 5, no caps or spaces. And you can and this show is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later in the show to find out more. All right, so it was a little bit of a light week in college football, I would say.
Yeah, I think based on who you ask, that's either an understatement or an overstatement. But I get where you're going.
Look, in the rankings, there wasn't any huge difference from this past weekend. In terms of...
Well, a few teams did fall out, though. A few new teams were added to the bottom of the rankings.
Tulane.
Arizona.
And Arizona. I mean, Tulane being added to the rankings, I think is such a joke. I mean, the committee is only adding Tulane to the rankings because they might be one of the at-large teams. I mean, realistically, Tulane probably has no business being in the top 25. And
they've won what, Nick D? One major non-conference game all year or something. Only a few, right?
Right. I mean, if you look at their schedule, they beat Northwestern, whoop-de-doo. Then the rest, and they also beat Duke. But they got killed by Ole Miss. And that's pretty much it. They didn't really have any they haven't beaten any ranked teams. And if you haven't, the thing that I can't stand about this current system is that a 2-loss Tulane team has a better shot at getting into the playoff than a 2-loss Michigan team or 2-loss USC team does.
Which is absurd considering that, and we'll get to picking the game in a little bit, but it's absurd in the fact when you look at it that, if Michigan wins, it'll have obviously beat number 1, and even that may not be enough.
Right.
Which I think is totally preposterous, considering that I think, and you think, and every logical person probably thinks that beating number 1 should count as the best win in the country. But apparently, to a bunch of people in suits, it may not. I don't know.
I think it would. I mean, this is just another reason that I can't stand the at-large bid and the automatic bids, is that it puts the committee
I don't like it either.
But right, I mean, it defies common sense. I think it's really just
it defies common sense, and it also rewards teams that don't win their conference too.
Yeah, and also it's just it also is. Here's the thing: it's there to appease people that for years have been saying, "Oh, we want these smaller school teams to get a chance in the playoffs. We want all these non-Power 5 schools." By the way, that hardly ever even happens, that there's a non-Power 5 school.
Your argument isn't necessarily based off that. Your argument is the oversaturation of that aspect being visible, which it absolutely is, and could potentially be the case in this year's field when and if it does come out. So
right. Well, the point I'm making is not that I don't think there should ever be a group of 5 team in the playoff.
Exactly,
I'm not making that argument. I'm making the argument that it shouldn't be automatic, and there's rarely ever a time where there is a team that's good enough to be in the playoff. There's only it happens maybe it's quite literally leap year frequency. Maybe once every 4 years that happens. We had UCF in 2017, we had Cincinnati in 2021, We had Boise State last year. It's like, okay, so once every 3 or 4
I
years.
feel like the only good teams out of the teams you just said were probably, I would say, Boise State and UCF, because Cincinnati got trounced by the time they got to the playoff.
Yeah, but they were still undefeated at the time. So I think it was fair. It was reasonable to put them in. And like I said, UCF, I think, probably could have been a top 12 team.
No,
But
right.
that happens once every, so like I said, 3 to 4 years that there's a team that's good enough that's not in the Power 5. Why are we guaranteeing it every year when there's rarely ever a team from the group of 5 that's good enough? It doesn't make any logical sense. And I also think the other reason is just that there's a lot of politics involved. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
I think so too.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with the automatic bids. I mean, the automatic bids, that is just politics being involved. That is just every conference wanting some type of guarantee that they're going to be in the playoffs. And I don't really think there should be any guarantees, not when your playoff is only 12 teams. I mean, in basketball, it's a little different because in basketball, there's 68 teams. So it's totally logical to say that if you're a Power 4 team that wins your conference, you're obviously probably going to be good enough to play in the tournament. But football is a totally different animal. It's a totally different
football
animal.
is totally different animal, and it's fewer games. You also have 2 bye weeks where byes in basketball really don't exist. So
Yeah,
unless you're playing in the conference tournament. So yeah, I mean, it is for sure when you just alluded to it, but 100% for sure it is a very, very different system. There's
but
no
yeah,
question.
it's very obvious to me that like they just snuck into Lane because they know that there's a really good chance they're going to have to be they're going to have to use Tulane to fill the group of 5 quota this year, even though they're clearly not even close to being good enough. In terms of the rest of the rankings, I don't really take much of an issue with the rest of the rankings at all.
What do you think of Michigan and Oklahoma swapping places though?
Well, they didn't swap places.
Well, no, I'm just saying, wasn't there? No, my point more so was, what did you think of the committee loving Michigan's win over Maryland? Is my point.
I don't think they should. Wait, where was Michigan last?
Because they were 18 last week and now they're 15, I think.
I think a lot of that was because Texas and USC lost, not because Michigan won.
Okay.
I think that's really just what it was. I don't think the committee necessarily loved the Maryland win. The teams that I think are ranked a little too high are Vanderbilt and Utah. Those
Vanderbilt for sure, because Vanderbilt didn't take care of business when their season was on the line.
Right. Vanderbilt and Utah, I think, are ranked way too high. Texas and USC.
Utah for sure. Utah at number 13 is ridiculous.
Yeah, and Texas and USC are ranked too low. I would swap the spots of Utah and Vanderbilt for Texas and USC, and I would put USC ahead of Texas. And I would honestly probably put Texas ahead of Michigan. I don't think Michigan.
Really?
would.
What makes you say that?
Overall, I don't think I don't think Michigan's been that good. I don't think their resume is that good. Now, if they beat Ohio State, I would change my mind about that for sure. But if you look at Michigan's resume, I mean, I think Michigan is actually very similar to what Texas is in the Big Ten. Both of them they've won a lot of really close games against average to below average Big Ten and SEC teams. They don't have any great wins. They do have a good non-conference game that they scheduled, which they both lost. Overall,
I would argue, and this kind of sucks, I'm sure you might agree, but I would argue Michigan's best win is probably Nebraska, but that may even be a stretch because look at how bad Nebraska's been the last month of the season.
Right. I mean, if you look at, okay, so just compare the 2 seasons that they've had. It's very, very similar. I guess the only difference is that Michigan doesn't have a bad loss like Texas does. Like they lost at Florida. Michigan doesn't have that. But if you look at
and as I'm sure you know, Michigan, at least the last month of the year, hasn't played from behind versus Texas, having done the exact opposite. So,
right, and then just like Texas, when they were tested against USC, just like they lost 31-13. just like how Texas lost 35-10 against Georgia. Michigan has they don't usually they're struggling to win games against teams that really just aren't that good in their
To be
conference.
fair, though, Michigan did get the help it needed this past week by Oregon beating USC. So
it did. Now, USC, here's the thing. USC should be ahead of Michigan. Texas, I can understand either way. I would put Texas ahead of Michigan, but I understand the argument the other side too.
yeah, and I would put USC ahead of Michigan too, just based on the head-to-head.
Right. USC beat Michigan. Their resumes are very similar. USC lost to Oregon and Illinois and
Notre
Notre
Dame.
Dame. Notre Dame. So non-conference game, just like Michigan lost to Oklahoma. And when Michigan was tested against USC, they lost that game. Other than USC, they haven't really played any other tough teams. They haven't played Oregon. They haven't played Ohio State. They haven't played Indiana. So I don't think it's really fair to say, well, USC has 2 losses and Michigan only has USC has 3 losses and Michigan only has 2. Well, one of those teams didn't actually have to play Oregon. So I don't the schedules are not exactly even.
No,
I think their resumes are very similar. And when they went head to head, USC beat them by quite a lot. Not only that, I just think USC's resume overall is better.
Yeah, the question is though can USC get the help it needs to potentially, because I don't think based on how the field looks now, I don't think USC can get in with 3 losses. I don't know if you have a different opinion on that, but to me it seems that the field is too stacked with 2 lost teams to where a 9-3 team getting in. I don't see how it's feasible. I could be wrong in saying that because I do think USC's resume is very good. But do you foresee a 3-loss USC team potentially getting in? Because right now, as it stands, I think it has to beat UCLA this weekend and then hope for a lot of help. So,
not with the current system, not with the automatic bids and the spot reserved for the group of 4 team for the group of 5 team. No, there's no way, because the SEC and the Big Ten combined can't get more than 8 teams in, because then you have Notre Dame, then you have the ACC winner, and then you have the Big 12 winner, and then you have the group of 5 team, and that's assuming that BYU, and that's assuming that they're only going to take one, and that's assuming that they're only going to take one Big 12 team and one ACC team.
Right, exactly. I was gonna say then you still have to factor in the ACC too.
And with the SEC, they're probably going to get 5 teams. They're probably going to get 5 teams just by the fact that, like, Oklahoma is currently ahead of Alabama, and Alabama's assuming they beat Auburn, which they might not, but assuming that they do, they will be well on their way to the SEC championship. They're not going to punish Alabama, even if they end up losing in the SEC championship. So you end up with 5 teams from the SEC that end up in the playoffs. You have A&M, Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss. You have to put all 5 teams in. And
do you think if Texas beats A&M, they're in, or do you think they just miss out? What do you?
In my view, I think they're going to end up missing out. Not because I think they shouldn't get in. I think that if Texas
but would you make the argument though that if they don't get in, one of the reasons why they potentially didn't get in is because they're going to punish them for a non-conference loss to Ohio State?
You can make that argument, although I think you can make that argument for sure, because I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree with that because look at the current standings right now. I think the committee, people say the committee has a brand bias, but I think that's bullshit. I think the committee has a record bias. I think that at a certain point, sometimes they're not looking at the full body of work, and sometimes they're just looking at the record. Look at the current rankings right now, and it's like, if you look at the rankings, it's like you have Michigan, Vanderbilt, Utah and Miami at 12, 13. Miami, Utah, Vanderbilt, and Michigan at 12, 13, 12 to 15.
Between those teams that you just said, if you were the committee and you had to pick one of those teams to get in right now, who would it be?
One of those 4 teams I just mentioned?
Yeah.
Oh, easily Miami. Easily. If I had to pick one of those 4 teams I just mentioned, definitely Miami.
Okay.
But then behind them, you have Texas and USC at 16 and 17. And, Texas and USC, like I said, I think clearly are ranked too low, especially USC. USC should not be 17. USC should be more like 13. And Texas maybe 14 or 15. And Utah and Vanderbilt should both be lower, closer to 20. Even like Tennessee, I think might be ranked a little too low. I don't think Tennessee should be ranked below Virginia. I think that's ridiculous.
No way. No way.
And Pitt, I think probably should be ranked a little bit higher, potentially. And maybe Arizona State. I think Tennessee is ranked. I think Tennessee probably is ranked a little too low.
Okay. Do you disagree with the top 6, or do you like it as is?
No, I don't really.
I mean, could you make the argument, Nick D? I know we ask this question every week, but let's just hypothetically say they obviously didn't do this. They kept 1 and 2 the same. But let's say for whatever reason a couple weeks ago they put Indiana number 1 and Ohio State number 2. Would you have been okay with it or no?
No, because what would Indiana or Ohio State have done to get them to flip that? Like if you wanted to argue from week 1 that Indiana should be number 1, I'd be like, okay, if you're going to do that, then you have to do that from week 1. But what changed since then that would make you say that Ohio State's number 1, now Indiana's number 1 and Ohio State's number 2? And realistically, I think Ohio State's the best team.
I think so too.
I
think so too. When healthy, they are. Yeah. When healthy, they are. I agree.
Well, the problem with Ohio State is that they haven't always been healthy the whole year. The biggest concern, the thing with Ohio State and Texas A&M, now I think both Ohio State and A&M, both great teams, but both of them have one thing in common, which is that their schedule has been fairly weak.
I agree. I mean, think about it. Who is the toughest team that Ohio State has played? You really can't name a single team on its schedule.
The best team they played was Texas.
Well, no, I'm saying within conference, either you can't pick one.
Washington,
but they killed them.
Exactly. So that nobody in their conference that they played was that good. Now it's going to be Michigan at the end of the season. Their best Big Ten opponent will end up being Michigan.
Right. I was just saying going into this week. I mean,
but going into this week, yeah. So far, it's been Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a team like that. That's the problem with these schedules is that even within conferences, like Texas A&M is a great team, but they're going to be going to the SEC championship without playing Alabama, Georgia, or Ole Miss. Like that to me is a little bit of a flaw.
I
agree. Or Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Or Oklahoma. So you have the 4 other best teams in the SEC.
Which is why the Texas game on Saturday is a must win. Don't you agree?
It is, but they're not going to drop out of the playoffs.
Right.
They're not going to drop out of the playoffs because they're the number 3 team in the country now.
Would they still make the SEC championship game or no?
Maybe not. I don't know. That depends on a bunch of tiebreaker scenarios. I think that if Alabama wins, they're definitely going to be getting in.
Okay.
And right now, I think you could make the argument that Georgia might look like a better team than Texas A&M. I think you could make a case for that right now for Georgia.
Okay, so here's the scenario. So if Alabama beats Auburn, Nick D, they're in. If A&M beats Texas, or if Alabama and Ole Miss lose, A&M is in. In order for Georgia to get in, it needs outside help in the sense that Alabama and A&M need to both lose. And then for Ole Miss to get in, it needs to win, and it needs to have A&M lose and Alabama lose. So those are all the SEC championship scenarios.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
So
as you can tell, there's a few straightforward ones at the top that make logical sense, and there are a few other ones where you're like, whoa, it's mass chaos. So
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Alabama's in, right? They're in.
yeah,
Assuming they win.
assuming it beats Auburn, yes. Yep.
Yeah, but it does put, you're right though. If Texas beats A&M, it does put them in a little bit of a weird spot because I
A
do think
very weird spot.
it puts the committee in a weird spot because you don't want to punish them for losing on the road in a game that they scheduled to the number one team in the country. You have to effectively just not count that loss.
I agree because Texas was preseason number one.
And then in that case, they're effectively a two-loss team, just like Oklahoma is a two-loss team. And Texas beat Oklahoma head-to-head. So, I mean, overall, Oklahoma's body of work is better than Texas's, so I wouldn't have too much.
Could you make the same argument and for Michigan, considering it went to Oklahoma and lost? And technically that was not a conference game for them.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not holding it against Michigan. I mean, look, I'm treating Michigan as if they're a one-loss team.
Right.
My issue with Michigan is not the number of losses, it's their body of work. I mean,
Yeah,
their resume is not that great.
which is not good.
I mean,
They had a very easy Big Ten schedule. Let's just be honest.
I mean, the
So
schedule has been a joke. I mean, similar to like A&M in the SEC. I mean, Michigan has not played well, at least not yet. Ohio State, I mean, they will play Ohio State this week, but they haven't played Ohio State, Indiana, or Oregon.
Yeah.
And the only tough team in the Big Ten that they played was USC. So I don't really like the way I see it with the rankings is I don't just look at the number of losses because that's not such a black and white thing. You have to look at the body of work, which is what the committee is at least supposed to do. I think the committee does that at the top, but then in the middle of the rankings, they get lazy and then just go to record. That's kind of, but I think that the thing with Texas, which hurts them the most, is not exactly their record. I think it's their body of work. Texas's body of work has not been good. That's been the issue with Texas.
Right. And speaking of, we were just mentioning Michigan. I mean, Michigan's path to the Big Ten title game is easier said than done. You got to beat Ohio State at home, and then you got to hope one of two things happen. Either Indiana gets upset by Purdue, which won't happen, or Oregon stumbles against Washington. Oh, even Michigan's path to the conference title game is tough, even though there's been the great debate of, is it actually better for Michigan not to play in the conference title game? That way they're well rested for an extra week. That's another discussion we'd have later on in the show. But I think these conference title scenarios, as we're just now talking about them, I think are going to come into play more so than people might realize, which I think is very fascinating. So
yeah, because the thing is that Michigan is probably not better off missing out on the conference championship game because the committee is not going to punish a team for losing in the conference championship game.
So you're saying that their goal should be to try to get in if they can, right?
Well, it's only going to help them. It's not going to if they don't make the conference championship game, I don't think Michigan's going to have a shot.
I don't think so either.
I mean, and a miracle would have to happen for them to even make the conference championship game. So, like we saw from last year, teams will never be punished for making the conference championship game and losing, as they shouldn't. If the committee sets the stage that a team that makes the conference championship game is ahead of another team that didn't make theirs, the team that loses the conference championship game should not be punished for losing a game that they earned. It's better to make it to the conference championship game and lose than to not make it at all, as we saw last year with SMU and Alabama.
Yeah, and as we saw last year too with Penn State, where Penn State wasn't punished, they were actually rewarded with the home playoff game to start. So
now that was the other thing, which was the problem with the old format, which was that Penn State was better off because they lost than Oregon was.
Because Oregon had to play in the Rose Bowl and they got trounced.
Oregon had to play Ohio State in the first round.
Yeah.
Like, or their first round after, because they had a bye. But Penn State, they had to play Boise State and SMU, which was the problem with the seeding, with the automatic seeding. It's a good thing they changed that. So that's not really going to be an issue so much. But no, I do agree with the committee that teams that make the conference championship game should not be punished. That also very likely means that BYU gets in. Because BYU, well, actually maybe not, because they're ranked 11, and 11 is not going to be good enough because of the automatic bids.
Even if BYU makes the Big 12 championship game?
No, because as of now, I think they're out. They're ranked number 11, and 11's not good enough because number 24, Tulane, is going to be ahead of them.
BYU needs 3 things to happen in order for them to get in. They need to win, Arizona State needs to lose, and Texas Tech needs to also lose.
Yeah, and Texas Tech, I think that you can make an argument for, I think it might not be unfair to say Oregon.
It's 2 separate. So let me rephrase. It's BYU needs to win, and one of 2 things: either Arizona State loses or Texas Tech loses, and a combination of the other team wins. So whoever loses, the opposite team of who I just said needs to win. So it's very, very confusing from a tiebreaker standpoint. So,
correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but BYU as of now, BYU is not in the playoff because they're ranked number 11. The top 10 teams are all in. But then you have the ACC champion, who will probably not be Miami. And then you have, in what looks like, Tulane, who would be the at-large bid. So they're going to end up. There's a good chance that BYU gets.
By the way, speaking of Miami, Nick D, Miami is the most absurd path out of any team in college football, at least in my opinion. Just looking at this briefly, to me, Miami is the most absurd path out of any team in college football to even make the conference title game, let alone win it.
Well, in a weird way, Miami, ironically enough, Miami is getting screwed over by the fact that their conference is so easy. Because all of the other teams, they're screwed over by 2 things. They're screwed over by their conference being too easy, and by the scheduling being so screwed up in that conference that none of the top teams are playing each other. So all of the teams all the top teams in the ACC are not playing each other.
And somehow all alive for the conference title game, which makes no sense.
Yeah, the ACC is the biggest shit show. So all 4 teams ahead of Miami: Virginia, Pitt, SMU, and Georgia Tech. I mean, Pitt and Georgia Tech played each other. Virginia doesn't play any of those other top teams, if I'm not mistaken. SMU does not play Georgia Tech. SMU's one loss was, and if you look at the resumes of these teams, even though they're ranked ahead of Miami, they're in the standings, like, their resumes are not as good as Miami. And I'm not the biggest fan of Miami this year, but like, the committee put Miami at 12, and then the next best ACC team at 21.
Doesn't make sense.
Yet Miami's not even like in the conversation. Another reason why the automatic bids are stupid. The automatic bids are stupid because what do we have the committee for? The committee, like, what do we have the committee for if we're doing automatics? Like, the committee is there to make rankings. And if the committee has Miami at 12 and SMU at 21, I mean, that just means the committee is not even putting Miami and SMU in the same category. That's what it means.
Or it's clear that the committee hasn't watched both teams as thoroughly as they should.
But I think it says more of the former. I think the former, like, I think it. Now, look, the committee is not perfect, but I think the committee does a better job than they get credit for. I very much often think the committee is correct. A lot of people were getting on the committee for putting Notre Dame ahead of Miami, even though Miami beat Notre Dame in week 1. But it's like, I don't think that's fair because the committee was not comparing Notre Dame and Miami. People don't understand the way the comparisons work. They take small groups of teams and compare them that way. So they take 4 or 5 teams, compare those teams. They take 4 or 5 teams and compare those teams. They don't take all 25 teams and compare all of them. That's not how it works.
Right. I mean, I'm just curious. Do you think that Miami should be ranked ahead of Notre Dame because they won?
No, for the same reason they shouldn't be ranked. For the same reason SMU shouldn't be ranked ahead of Miami. Like, SMU beat Miami, and Miami is 9 points ahead of SMU, and Notre Dame is 3 points ahead of Miami. So no, that would be ridiculous. Because if that's the logic that you're going to use, well, by that logic, SMU should be ahead of Miami and Notre Dame. What do you do? Put SMU at 8? That's ridiculous. The truth is, the better team doesn't always win.
Right.
We see this all the time. Alabama ranked ahead of Florida State. Is that crazy? No. And it's not because Alabama has more wins than Florida State does. It's because of the body of work. And Alabama's been ahead of Florida State for quite a while. So it's the same thing. I do briefly want to talk about Lane Kiffin. Do you think he's leaving? Now, I think this is a very Lane Kiffin thing. Lane Kiffin loves to be the center of attention. But historically, college football coaches are not loyal to their programs.
No, they're not.
Which I'm cool with.
Yeah. And he is the epitome of that. He is the literal epitome of that.
Yeah, which I'm cool with because the programs are not loyal to the coaches, so it can go either way. It's fine.
No, absolutely not.
But there is the thing now though is that coaches don't need to jump ship as much to win games, to be winners. They don't need to. Coaches like Lane Kiffin can be perfectly successful at a program like Ole Miss. I think the best example of this is Curt Cignetti at Indiana. Indiana is currently the second best team in the country, the second ranked team in the country. Who would have, strictly because of their head coach? Nobody would have ever thought Indiana could be the number 2 team in the country in football, maybe basketball, but not football.
Right, exactly.
So Lane Kiffin doesn't have to leave. That being said, I don't know what's going on inside his head. I don't know how much he likes Mississippi, living there. I don't know if he just wants more money. That could be the case. I don't know what's inside his head, but I just don't think he needs to.
No, I don't think he needs to, but that's different than saying will he, and I actually think he might. I don't know. I think the college football coaching carousel, as we've seen over the last few months, has been so crazy that it would only be rather fitting to see him leave and be the biggest offseason story in the entire sport.
Yeah. So, I could totally see this going on.
I'm just going to say this. I think if they somehow lose we're actually recording this after the Egg Bowl is over, but assuming the Egg Bowl is as crazy as people make it out to be, or maybe one of the biggest Egg Bowl games of all time, if we come back to this and it happens to be that Ole Miss lost the Egg Bowl to Mississippi State, I think a lot of people are going to be asking the question, is he actually leaving because they just lost the biggest rivalry game of the year, which would be the most chaotic nightmare scenario for the committee, given where Ole Miss is currently sitting at the moment. So,
yeah.
What do you think? Do you think he leaves or no?
Ultimately, no. Even though it would be a very Lane Kiffin thing for him to leave, I don't think he's going to leave because, like I said, I don't think it's not really all that necessary. Or at least, it's hard for me to be inside his head. I would, if anything, argue that he shouldn't. And maybe he would see the same things that I'm seeing. But that's why I lean towards no, because I think Lane Kiffin's a smart guy. And I think for him to leave might be kind of stupid. And also, if he goes to LSU, it's you think that's going to last? I think it'll probably last longer at a program like Ole Miss. If anything, it would make more sense for him to leave and go to the NFL than it would for him to leave to go to another SEC school.
That's what I think too. But you remember how his first NFL experiment went, it didn't go well.
Right. That doesn't mean, that's like saying Nick Saban's NFL experiment didn't go well. I mean, that doesn't mean it can't work.
Right.
Like, I think that he'll probably end up staying. That's what I ultimately believe, because I think he can. Look, the thing with LSU is that, like, their program, they have higher expectations than Ole Miss does.
That's
Like,
true.
good, not great doesn't cut it at LSU. I think good, not great cuts it at Ole Miss. But at LSU, I think they fire their coaches very quickly.
They do.
All right, I want to get into some picks. Ole Miss is
You want to
Egg
skip
Bowl.
over Dan Lanning?
Do you want to talk about that? Do we have time?
Sure, we can talk about it.
All right. So quickly, Dan Lanning bashes the SEC in an interview.
I think proof's in the pudding, right? It's a good team. We beat them, right? All we can do next week is try to do the same thing, right? And this conference is a really good conference. It's competitive, right? We didn't play Chattanooga State today, right? Like some other places, right? We competed. So, that being said, it's tough playing 9 conference games. It's tough playing in this league. And we got to take advantage of playing a good team today and attacking that.
All right. So obviously he had his moment to take his dig there. I can't really blame him for saying it, just considering that at least in the other conference that he was speaking about, of course, it's the SEC. They have their cupcake week this week where most, if not all, of the SEC played a team, let's just say a team that is essentially a bye game before rivalry week, which is something the Big Ten does not really do at all, in fact. So I actually think what he said was kind of justified, just because the nature of college football and the intrigue, the pageantry, and the power. I mean, I think that was not only a statement for Oregon, but that was a statement sort of Big Ten to SEC, like, hey, you guys think you guys are so tough, and you guys think you have your chest puffed out. We just played our toughest game of the season in essentially a college football playoff eliminator and won, whereas you guys just got a free week to do whatever. And I think it was more so a slight at the fact that both things can't be created equally. And I think it probably pissed him off and rubbed him the wrong way, especially, and this is sort of off the topic of that, but I think Dan Lanning's anger and frustration too. I don't know if you saw it, but Oregon made like a whole cinematic video of them beating USC, and it was this whole thing where they actually showed the USC media notes before the USC game, and it were all these things that where they essentially dubbed the game as duck hunting season, and Dan Lanning took that personally, and obviously they went out and won the game. So I think his frustration was boiled over multiple different areas, and the SEC shot was just one of many things that he wanted to get off his chest, and thankfully he did. So
Here's the thing. I think that you shouldn't throw glass. Those who live in glass houses should not be throwing stones. I do kind of feel that way a little bit too. I mean, Oregon had Montana State on their non-conference schedule. I mean, look, I understand it's not late in the season, but I mean, they kind of do the same thing. I don't go that crazy over it when, if you look at Oregon. Now, in fairness, Oregon historically plays very good non-conference schedules. And this year, Oregon's non-conference schedule wasn't a joke, but it really wasn't their fault, because they had Oklahoma State and Oregon State on their schedule, along with Montana State. One Montana State per year, I'm totally fine with. Everybody does it at least once. The Oklahoma State and Oregon State games, I mean, both those teams weren't good this year, obviously. But in fairness, when they scheduled those games, I don't know about Oregon State. It was probably 3 or 4 years ago, if I'm going to take a guess.
Yeah, probably.
They scheduled the Oklahoma State game in like 2018, back when Oklahoma
State was good.
But Oklahoma State was one of the best teams of the Big 12 at the time. So that's a good non-conference game. And Oregon State, I mean, just a couple of years ago, Oregon State was pretty competitive against Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, Oregon State 3 years ago was a pretty good team. They actually beat USC. So those non-conference games are actually not bad. It's not their fault that those teams – that's the problem with the way the scheduling works, is that, you know, when you schedule games, you don't know how the teams are going to end up. Just like with Alabama. I am kind of okay with Alabama playing a cupcake, because Alabama, for the most part, they're pretty good when it comes to the non-conference schedules. Like, Now, I guess I'd prefer teams play.
When they usually play a neutral site game against a very good team, usually early in the season.
Right, that's the thing, which they did. Although I think which actually this year they went on the road to play Florida State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did.
So the thing with Alabama is I'm kind of okay with them playing a school. I'm kind of okay with them playing Eastern Illinois and Louisiana Monroe for a couple of games because this year they also schedule 2 good non-conference games usually every year. This year they scheduled Florida State and Wisconsin.
Yeah,
and I know
Wisconsin was not great.
no,
But I'm sure when they scheduled it at the time, Wisconsin was still pretty good.
exactly my point. Wisconsin, when they scheduled the game, was probably the best team in the Big Ten West. Like Wisconsin, people forget Wisconsin used to be like
5 years ago
or 5th best team in the Big Ten. So it's not really that bad. And Florida State too. It's not their fault that Florida State and Wisconsin both fell off since they scheduled them. So I'm kind of cool with that on some level. Now, I do think every team should play 9 conference games, 3 non-conference games. I think that should be uniform. And the SEC,
I think so. I think so too. I think so too.
Now the ACC needs to do it too. And the ACC, it's even worse with the ACC because their schedules are way easier than SEC schedules.
Oh, for sure.
Hey fans, Novig is here to change the way you play. Available in 35 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and New York, Novig is America's #1 sports prediction market, and it's 10 times more profitable than traditional sports books because there's no house edge. Instead, you're betting directly against other sports fans just like yourself. Novig is also the only free exchange, which means you keep every dollar you win, whether you're putting plays down on the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, college sports, or even UFC and tennis. Novig gives you the power to pick the best odds, or better yet, set your own. Sign up today with the code ETB Network, and you'll get 1,000 Novig coins plus $5 in Novig cash, and special bonus offers like spending $5 and getting $50 back. Novig, where fans play smarter. You must be 21 years or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Forever Power 5 is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show.
So let's get into our picks. Forever Power 5 odds presented by Novig. Ole Miss. Can you bring Novig up? My phone's almost dead. Just in case
Sure, yeah.
The odds don't change. Last I checked, Ole Miss is now. By the time this show airs, it will be after the Egg Bowl happens. But for tracking purposes, I am taking Ole Miss -6.5.
Okay, I am also picking Ole Miss -6.5. I understand the love from the Mississippi State side because of the whole Lane Kiffin controversy, but guys, let's be honest here. You're playing a Ole Miss team that's all but playoff bound. All they have to do is take care of business. Even if the game was at home, I would take Ole Miss. So yeah, I like Ole Miss to cover the number as well. And I think the over/under is just too high. What do you think?
I'm not gonna touch it. My only concern is maybe they're my only concern is that like maybe Mississippi State's not gonna score a lot. That's my biggest concern. Overall, Mississippi State tends to hang around in these games. And the over/under is now 63.5. I'll move that up a little.
Okay.
I think Will. What did Will take?
Will has Mississippi State to cover, and he has the over.
Okay. Well, I'll let him know about the extra point on there. Maybe he'll change his mind. All right. And ultimately, I just think that it's not going to be enough points for Mississippi State to cover. Georgia.
I don't think so either.
Georgia -13.5. Oh, this is also a Friday game.
Yes.
I totally forgot about that when I was picking these games. So yes, for tracking purposes, we're for these first 3 games. It's for tracking purposes. So let's just breeze through them quickly. We don't need to break them down. Georgia minus
Sure.
13
No
and a half
problem.
against Georgia Tech. I love Georgia minus the 2 touchdowns. I think Georgia is looking really good. I think they're looking like I think they look like they could be the best team in the country. Georgia Tech, I never had much faith in.
Yeah,
so
it's not going to be like last year's multiple overtime chaos. I like Georgia too, and I just think that over/under is way too steep because I don't think Georgia Tech's offense is on the level of a Kirby Smart built offense at all. So I'm comfortable with just taking Georgia to cover the number. And to be honest with you, Nick D, I think they should be able to do it pretty easily.
Yeah, and Will is taking Georgia and minus 13 and a half and the over. Although now it's hold on a second. Now it's 59 and a half. You change your mind?
I think I'm gonna stay away from the number. What about you?
Oh, okay. No. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Will. So Will took the over at 60 and a half. No, I'm not touching the over under.
Okay.
All right. A&M, also for tracking purposes. I know this game already aired when you're watching this, or is currently airing. A&M minus 2.5 now. Changing a lot. I don't know. Changing a lot. Let me just I mean, that's a lot of fluctuation in these lines, or at least on Novig. A&M minus 2.5 at Texas. It's effectively a pick'em game. I like A&M.
I like A&M. What about you?
I like A&M. Actually, on unnecessary wagers, Liam's lock of the week was Texas, and mine was Texas A&M.
Okay, so you have.
So we had opposing locks of the week. I love Texas A&M here because here's the problem. Texas does not play a full 60 minutes of football.
No, they don't.
Every game,
they always wake up in the fourth quarter at the last possible minute. There's been several examples of that.
Or it's a game like Georgia where they totally fall apart in the fourth quarter and they get destroyed. So I don't trust Texas to play a full 60 minutes of football. The other thing is that Texas's defense, here's the thing. Texas A&M is an offensive team, but their defense is very, very good situationally. They're a very good third down defense. I think that if they get I think that is a very underrated fact about A&M. And also Texas's defense has not, look, they're a very good defensive team, but they've been giving up a lot of points lately. Texas A&M has an elite offense, the best offense in the SEC, better than Alabama's, I think,
and one of the best quarterbacks in the nation too. People forget. And I think he's very underrated,
and one of the best receiving cores. So I like A&M here. Will is taking A&M and the under. Will is taking A&M and the under. All right, so finally, we head over to the game. Finally, a game that has not happened yet. Ohio State minus 9.5 at Michigan. The over/under is 44.5. And go ahead.
Yeah, I'll start. So obviously, the stakes really need no introduction, but I'll give them to you anyway. So of course, Michigan is looking for their 5th straight win in the rivalry. Ohio State has not won this game, counting COVID, in 6 physical years. You have 2 quarterbacks that have never played in this game before, one being Julian Sain and the other being Bryce Underwood. It's supposed to be 30 degrees, and there's supposed to be a chance of snow on the ground. I think that's why you've seen this line fluctuate throughout the week. I think it opened as a double-digit line, and of course it came down when some other developments occurred. But I actually think Michigan is good enough to at least hang with Ohio State. I'm not sure if they'll win the game, but I just think that with the way Michigan has played, especially defensively, the last few weeks, and especially if they can get Bryce Underwood out in space and kind of let him do his thing. Oh shit! He dropped out. Let me pause it.
Keep going. Right.
Okay, so continuing from where I was, I don't know if Michigan can win this game per se, but I actually think Michigan is good enough to hang with Ohio State. I think if they can let Bryce Underwood do his thing, they don't limit him offensively, and they keep Julian Sayin on the sidelines, and especially if they keep Jeremiah Smith grounded a little bit, I think this game actually might be closer than what the odds makers and the experts think. So I'm going to say this. I don't think Michigan wins the game outright per se, but I do think that Michigan does enough to at least cover the number. Michigan might win, but I just think Ohio State's offense is a little bit better. And I think it's one of those games where more than certainly it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last is more than likely going to win. And it'll probably end up being a situation where either way, a game-winning field goal might be had. So at the very least, though, in a roundabout way, give me Michigan to cover the number plus 9.5. I know it's not a very popular pick. I just think past rivalry history tells us that Michigan shows up for this game, as has been evident by the last 4 meetings. So,
because the spread is 9.5 and not 10.5, I'm going to go with Ohio State to cover this number.
okay.
I think Ohio State is just too talented. Michigan, the last time they were tested against a good Big Ten team was against USC. They lost by 18 points. I think Ohio State covers this number. I think the first half is going to be a little closer. Overall, I think Ohio State wants revenge, and I think these two teams just don't really compare right now. Now, it's true that within the past, post-COVID, in the 2020s, Michigan has played Ohio State very tough. That has not always been the case.
Not just tough, but beat them outright. I mean, they're yeah.
But that has not always been the case. I think Ohio State gets their revenge here and wins by 2 possessions. Will has Michigan plus the 9.5. All right. Texas Tech at West Virginia minus 23.5. The over-under is 52.5. Over-under 52.5. I love Texas Tech here. Texas Tech has blown out everybody that they've played except Arizona State because their quarterback got hurt, and Will Hammond ended up starting that game. It's the only game that they lost. So Texas Tech, I like to destroy West Virginia. West Virginia stinks this year. Texas Tech has absolutely annihilated their competition this year. So I like Texas Tech.
Yeah, I like Texas Tech too. They might even score 23 points by themselves. That's how bad this West Virginia team is. And there's not much really to say other than the fact that I just think Jacob Gonzalez is an absolute beast. I think he's very, very good. I think he's very underrated. I think the reason why not enough people know who he is because he plays for Texas Tech. But every single week he's playing like he's a true worthy Heisman candidate. And I think Texas Tech will be a dark horse sleeper in the CFP, where it may end up winning 1 game or maybe even 2 games based on the draw it might get. So you never know. But I think Texas Tech to the Big 12 championship game at the very least is all but a surefire guarantee. Give me Texas Tech to cover the number on Saturday against a West Virginia team that's in clear rebuild mode.
All right. So moving on to LSU, Oklahoma. Now the spread is 10.5. 9.5 and 10.5 are huge differences. So the 10.5 point, especially with a low scoring game like this, I like LSU to cover the 10.5 because I think this game is going to be a classic Oklahoma game that's going to be low scoring. I don't think either team's going to score a whole lot. Oklahoma doesn't typically score a lot. Oklahoma scores on big plays and when they get really good field position. Their offense is not running well consistently. I think Oklahoma's almost like the Iowa of the SEC now. They're not the best offensive team, and I just don't think Oklahoma's going to score enough to cover this number. I think I could see them winning I could see the score being a little funky, like a 15-9 type of game. But I don't think they're going to cover the number.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think I'm just going to go conservative and take the under because I just don't think either of these teams are going to show up. I think it'll be, out of all the games we're picking, this is probably going to be the least exciting game in terms of just flashiness and style points. So I'm going to go a little bit more conservative here, and I will take a total, and I will be taking the under.
All right. Yeah, Will is taking Oklahoma and the under. All right. Oregon minus 6.5 at Washington, over under 51.5. I like Washington here, and I like the over. Love the over. I like the over even more than I like Washington. I think it's going to be a tough game for Oregon. I think Oregon's going to win outright, but it's going to be tough. Similar to how they beat Iowa. It was a tough game for them, except this is going to be the opposite. This is going to be more of a shootout, whereas Iowa was low scoring. Washington is a really tough place to play. It's underrated how tough of a place to play Washington is. So I like Washington and the over.
Yeah, I just think with the way Washington has looked the past few weeks, where they've just been, to me, kind of sluggish and inconsistent now that they're not in the playoff picture, I think Oregon looks like a totally different team. They scored 42 points on USC this past week like it was nothing, and I think Oregon knows that it's playing for seeding, and potentially based on what happens earlier in the day, it could be playing for another spot in the Big Ten title game. So I think Oregon plays with a sense of urgency, and not only do I think Oregon wins outright, I actually think they cover the spread. I think Washington has not really played inspired football as of the last few weeks, as I just alluded to, because by virtue of Wisconsin's upset a couple weeks ago, I kind of killed Washington's CFP hopes. So I just don't see Washington playing really well. Oh, I think Damon Williams gets sacked a couple times, and I think Dante Moore does enough. He doesn't put up pretty numbers or anything, but he does enough to where I think they win. And if I'm not going to, but if I were to do it, I would pick the over. And I actually think your over pick on this, you might win. So we are split. But what I can tell you is I think the over is a legitimate possibility of hitting for sure.
All right. Vanderbilt at Tennessee minus 2.5. Let's go through these games quickly because we don't have a lot of time. Vanderbilt at Tennessee minus 2.5, over under 65.5. I like Tennessee here. I'm not a fan of Vanderbilt. I think they're overrated. I think they're a better story than they are a team. I think the fact that Vanderbilt's ranked ahead of Tennessee is a joke. Overall, I don't love Vanderbilt. I don't like either team's defense. I mean, that's why this over under so high. I'm not going to touch it because it might be a little too high. If one team is a little off on offense, there's no way.
Do you think if the over under was in the upper 50s, you would have took it though?
Yeah, but I'm not going to take the under. I'm just not going to touch it. I'm just going to take Tennessee.
Okay. I will take Tennessee too. All of the reasons you just said. Yeah, it's obviously a big game for both sides, but Vanderbilt, I think within the last 2 weeks has lost its luster. And I think it continues on Saturday, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Will is taking Tennessee and the under. All right. The Iron Bowl. Alabama is minus 5.5 at Auburn, over under 46.5. I like Alabama here, and I like Alabama on a backdoor cover. I think Auburn will be covering most of the game, but Alabama ends up kicking a last-minute field goal or a last-minute touchdown that ends up covering the spread. I think Alabama wins, but Auburn gives them trouble, just like Auburn's given every other SEC team trouble.
Wait, are you saying a last-minute touchdown for Alabama that barely wins the game too?
No, that covers. Like a last minute, I could see there being like a last minute field goal for Alabama that ends up covering the spread, or a last minute touchdown.
All right, so you're saying that Alabama is maybe up by 4 and they kick a field goal to win by exactly 7 or something?
Yeah, something like that I could see happening.
Okay. I like the over in this game just because, if you look at the previous Iron Bowls, it seems like a lot of points are scored, and it seems like you don't really know which direction either team is going to go in, and Auburn could be horrible, and it always plays Alabama tough, and Alabama knows that, it needs to play this game with the sense of urgency because, of course, Kalen DeBoer, was still in the midst of his bounce back here, and obviously this Auburn game has not gone well for Alabama in previous years. You could argue that Alabama's gotten lucky in these last 2 Iron Bowls, but they are the better team. But nonetheless, though, I do think a lot of points are going to be scored, so I'm just going to go conservative and take the over. So,
all right, UCLA and Will has Sorry about that. Will has Auburn plus 5.5 and the under. All right. USC at UCLA. USC minus 21.5. Over under is 59.5. Short answer is USC, I think, blows them out. UCLA has had their time. I think they're done. I think USC kills them.
Yeah, I was thinking about taking the 3 touchdowns in the hook, but USC really hasn't shown me that they can score at will like that, at least in several weeks. So I'm going to go conservative more so and say that the over hits. But from a general standpoint, USC can and should win this game, as you just alluded to. UCLA's time is done. It's clear that Tim Skipper's press conferences are getting more and more boring by the week, and this UCLA season needs to end. So I like USC to at least win, but I do think the over has a legitimate chance of hitting because, as you just alluded to, USC blowout is very, very possible. So.
And Will has the over in the USC UCLA game. What was Will? Oh, for Oregon Washington, Will's pick was
Washington to cover the spread.
Okay, I don't know if I mentioned that. All right, one more game that I just wanted to put in there that I forgot to put.
Okay,
Miami minus 6.5 at Pitt. Over under was 50.5. I love Pitt in this game. This is a classic game that Miami would lose. And since it's an ACC game, Pitt's actually going to care about winning it.
And
he's actually going to tell his players to win.
And given the past history between these two, Pittsburgh usually shows up for these kind of games too. So I think it could very realistically happen. I actually like Pittsburgh to cover the number as well. I don't think it beats Miami outright because I do think Miami is the better team, but do not be surprised if Pittsburgh has the lead for most of this game. And I am staying away from the over-under just because you never know with this particular game every year. You never know what the weather conditions may bring. But at the very least, I do think Pitt has enough to cover the number. And even looking at this number, over-under 50.5 in a place like Pittsburgh this time of year where snow can sometimes accumulate. I don't know if it will this weekend, but even if it does, I think 50.5 is too steep. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to touch it, but I like Pitt here. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. That's our show this week. I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Zain Bando. This is Forever Power 5. We'll be enjoy your Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll be back next week.
Have a good one.